So I guess I could be like, thank you for joining me today for my session, No Filters, Unmasking Bias in the Workplace. Although you kind of have to join this session because you're continuing education credits. So yeah, anyway, but thank you for being with us today. And I'm pretty sure you've seen my bio by now, but I'm Melody Colbert-Keene. I'm the owner of Me's Place Soul Food Restaurant in Joplin, Missouri. And I used to be a mayor of Joplin. So it's really kind of strange to have people come into your restaurant and say, oh my goodness, can we get a picture with you? Yeah, because the mayor is now serving your dinner. But hey, whatever works, right? Anyway, let's get to the fun that we're going to have to do today on your session. Like I said, it's called Unmasking. Yeah, bias in the workplace. I was going good and then I just kind of messed up. Unmasking bias in the workplace. How to recruit and engage a multicultural team. That is very important because no one sector of people are the totality of making a corporation or a company work. At one point, you just have to take off the mask. And that's what we're going to talk about today is a few things about how do you take off the mask in the workplace. And to say, what do we mean when we say take off your mask? And in this day and age, we're not talking about COVID and the mask that everybody's having to wear or not wear, whichever one you're choosing to do. But that's a subject for another topic. But here we're talking about we're talking about the implied removal of a said piece that covers your face. Agreed? Because that's kind of what a mask is. So how does that fit into human resources world, you may ask? Well, after all, you are the ones that see the people, talk to the people, and decide if they pass the test worthy of your company's employment, right? What mask can they possibly have on that you are not aware of? And you would be correct in asking this question. Imagine being the only person in your office that looks different, speaks different, or whatever the difference may be. Now, imagine no one ever having a conversation with you. They never invite you to lunch. They never include you in discussions or ask for your input. Your coworkers and your management pretty much just leave you alone to do your work. So what do? You do your work and go home. And there's weeks of this on repeat. Then one day at a staff meeting, when management is seeking ideas and input from the team for an upcoming project, you know those meetings that you love to go to and secretly hate to go to and kind of secretly rush for them to be over. Yeah, those are the meetings I'm talking about. Well, someone mentions that they heard that you suggested a great idea at a networking function. That idea was widely discussed. It was accepted and successfully implemented. Then management takes notice, asks you to brainstorm for some projects, and then suddenly you're the go-to person for many projects that couldn't get off the ground before. And everybody wants to chat with you about the ideas. Has that ever happened to you? And is this an example of what's happening in today's workplace? Absolutely it is. It occurs more often than it is reported or recorded because nobody wants to be the one to mention things that may suggest a need for change. This does not make for an engaged or a productive workforce. So when I talk about mask, the mask I'm referring to is the mask that you, as the HR rep, may have on, the filter you may be wearing. These are the filters that are being used every time a potential new hire is encountered. Now, all y'all don't look at me crazy and say, well, she can't be talking about me, and look in the air, looking off like this, like, now what is she talking about? I don't use a filter when I talk to people. I just go off what the people tell me, nothing more and nothing less. Well, let me ask you, do you really do that? every single time? Or are you one of the many people who demonstrate a subconscious bias when it comes to who you talk to, or how much attention you pay to the person, or if they are worthy even of your time? What do you think when you see a person that's not the same hue as you, or the same sex, or maybe just doesn't look as neat as you? Do you instantly think of how hard the communication is going to be? Or maybe crosses your mind mentally thinking of how much work time they're going to miss? Now remember, we're still talking about just based off what they look like. And let me say, in fair defense of everybody, this is part of your job to select the best representatives for your company that you can, and to select those who will do the best job. So that in itself requires some type of filter, correct? Correct. But people shouldn't be filtered because of what they look like to be accepted, or to be seen as worthy of your time in the next step. You see, the filters I'm talking about are the deep-rooted ones, the ones you may not even think about. Those that are shaped by the media, or by the stories you've heard through your workplaces, or even stories you've shared or even heard at home and discussed with your friends. Those stories that make you think twice about hiring someone who doesn't look, think, or act like you do. Those stories that are shared in private conversation or with your family. The stories that stick in your subconscious and move to the front when you're facing a person that looks or closely resembles what you have been fed. And I'm talking about those instances where the media, where the media portrays a certain class of people as an unpopular statistic, and you mentally hold on to that perception and subconsciously apply the stereotype to that person that you're talking to. The point that I'm trying to make is there are subconscious biases that we all hold on to, whether we admit it. I don't even know what's going on with my throat. Whether we admit it or not. And they affect the way we perform our day-to-day duties. Every time we interact with people who look, think, or appear different than what we are used to dealing with. Now, listen to me say this. It doesn't make you a bad person. So nobody needs to get upset. Nobody needs to get defensive or tune out or to start thinking you're a bad person. On the contrary, I want you to think about your biases, to really think about them. Let them come to the forefront of your mind and really center on what you think, how it makes you feel, and how you act when faced with someone that's different than you. How do you react when a person doesn't demonstrate relatable or likable qualities based on your ideas? Not anyone else's, based on your ideas. How do you feel? Do you get a flush of heat? You know, your face gets all red and you kind of start sweating in your armpits and things. Or does your heart beat faster, which causes that heat to rise even more? Or maybe you're not able to hold eye contact. And I know that sounds strange being HR professionals, because that's one of the main things that's ingrained is eye contact. But maybe that person sitting in front of you is kind of throwing that eye contact off and you're like looking everywhere except at them. And maybe you have a zone out moment because you've already made up your mind about that type of person. Or could it be that you just really don't know what to say? And that's very fair and valid. Now, while I'm saying this, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to answer me. But I bet I've hit on a few examples that somebody has experienced at least one time Not all the time, but at least one time, and just didn't know what to do with that feeling. And like I said before, it doesn't make you a bad person. We've all done it. We've all experienced that at some time. The problem comes when we don't do anything about it. And those feelings, those thoughts, those perceptions that cloud our judgment and affect our ability to clearly see the person for who they are, not for who we think they may be. We apply filters. That is when you're applying a filter. And as I mentioned earlier, filters aren't a bad thing in and of themselves. We have to have some sort of ability to distinguish a potentially good fit for the company versus continually hiring a bad one, because then your job wouldn't last too long, right? Right. So how do we separate those two? Well, I'm glad you asked. You can start by asking yourself a few questions or setting up a few guidelines when dealing with a potential new hire. Like number one, if I had nothing but the person's appearance to go on, would I hire them? Why or why not? You can take a few minutes to answer that question. And number two, what level of comfort do I feel when I see certain names on the application, and why? And I want you to dig for that. I want you to say, well, that hasn't happened to me. But I want you to really think, does that pertain to you really? You see a name or you see something like that and you say, I've already got an idea of who that person may be. And like I said previously, that's shaped by media, that's shaped by conversations you have, that's shaped by things that are in your circle of influence. And I'm saying again, it doesn't make you a bad person. But if you're not honest with yourself that you experience these things, then how do we ever get past it? How do we ever grow? And how do we ever keep this from happening? Number three, am I substituting charisma for character? Because let's face it, we can get some people who can be very charismatic. They can give you or sell you the ice cubes in Alaska. They can sell you sunshine in hell. Oh man, I don't know if I can say that on here or not. Hey, we're all adults. And if not, we'll figure out a way to bleep it. But there's charisma. There's such a thing as charisma versus character. And you need to be able to distinguish between those two. Because you want somebody with good character, not just good charisma. And number four, what do I do to engage a new hire into the work atmosphere? And when you're saying you take that question to heart. What do you do to engage somebody who's new with your company into the workplace environment? How do you make them feel welcome? And hopefully, some of these things that I've mentioned will get you to thinking of possible missed opportunities by not having an inclusive work culture. Look at your current workplaces now. Are there employees of diverse cultures, gender, educational and professional backgrounds? Are these people represented in your company? Are they in supervisory or executive roles where they can help shape diverse policies? Or are they status quo? Or are they entry level and never seem to be able to move up? Those are things that you need to look at and see. Do we have a diverse representation? As a company leader, part of your responsibility is to assist the employees to acclimate to the work culture. You don't just hire them and say you're on your own now. Get out there and make it happen. Well, yeah, you have a lot of people that are self-starters, but there's nothing wrong with some common courtesy in the workplace and being genuinely kind and speaking and ask how someone is doing. Do you have coffee with them? Do you have lunch? Or do you stop by to learn more about them? Do you even introduce them to other coworkers? Or have you taken the time to learn of hobbies or skills that could be of an asset to your company? They may have some hidden talents that you know nothing of because no one is bothering to speak to those people or to speak to a new hire that may be a bit different. Take that time to engage them. Sometimes all it takes is a simple conversation to open the door to the possibilities. Don't let implicit biases limit your sight or vision. Just like one ingredient doesn't make a dish, you have to add seasoning or other foods to get it to taste right. And I threw that in there because remember, I told you I own a Me's Place soul food restaurant. So I would be a perfectly boring, not frequented place if I just had one dish with no seasoning, no nothing was added to it. Same as in your hiring. The same goes for diversifying your workforce. It takes many different minds, ideas, and viewpoints to make a productive workforce. All of those ideas don't come from one group of people. It comes from an expanse of people, of varying cultures, of varying looks. Those people bring different ideas. So if you want to increase your company output, you need to increase your company's input. And when I say input of what it looks like, input of ideas, create something that is varying, not something that's just the same, because no one wants to see the same or hear the same at all times. So keep this in mind. Hidden treasures are within every organization. It's not just about hiring people that don't look like you. It's about getting to know your team. Help them feel wanted. Let them know that their ideas are welcomed. And let them not only know, but feel that they are part of the team. Stop using filters to sift through everyone that may not look like you to keep yourself comfortable. Unmask bias in the workplace. So we'll take some time to have some questions that may arise, and I'll stop here and we'll get back with you with any type of questions that you may have that I may be able to answer. But thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and I hope I've shared something with you that may spark an interest or may seem like, hey, I may be able to do something a bit different. And even if not, then maybe it's something you can pass on to somebody else. But I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.